Kale had always believed that exploration was the purest test of courage. He had traveled across several star systems, witnessed worlds that glowed with colors beyond human imagination, and navigated alien terrains that made Earth's deserts and jungles feel tame. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for what awaited on the uncharted planet HFY-7. The mission had seemed simple at first. A distant signal had been detected from a massive crystalline structure floating above the planet's surface. Command Center had sent a team of humans and aliens to investigate. Kale had volunteered not because he sought glory, but because curiosity burned hotter in him than fear ever could. The moment he stepped off the shuttle, the air hit him like a living thing, shimmered faintly, refracting the light from the eye. Twin suns in the sky into countless spectral colors. The ground beneath him was hard, but crystalline veins ran through it, pulsing with faint energy. Strange, ethereal creatures moved between the trees, some floating without wings, others shimmering like molten glass. Everything about Zithra-7 screamed that it was alive in ways humans could barely understand. Kale's team set up temporary sensors around the area, but the explorer in him wanted more. He wanted to see the heart of this world. He slipped away from the others, careful not to disturb the alien life forms, and made his way toward a massive palace that hovered slightly above the forest floor. Its walls were translucent and twisted in impossible angles. The air around it seemed thicker, heavier, like gravity had taken a breath. He had heard stories about the palace. It belonged to the alien queen Solara, a being known across galaxies for her beauty, wisdom, and a curse that had terrified entire civilizations. Anyone who met her gaze was fated to either marry her or die. The stories called her both magnificent and deadly. Kale, despite himself, felt a thrill. Humans were always drawn to the impossible. That's what made them explorers. Kale crept into the palace, keeping to the shadows. The interior was unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls shimmered with liquid light, folding in on themselves in ways that made him question his senses. Floating platforms carried alien attendants who moved without sound. Strange symbols danced in the air, forming sentences in languages Kale could not understand but somehow felt. Then he saw her. She emerged from a doorway, her presence commanding and serene. Solara was taller than any human, with skin that glowed, faintly like the moon reflecting sunlight on water. Her eyes were the color of the deepest nebulae, swirling with light and shadow. The moment their gazes met, Kale froze. He felt a pull in his chest, a warmth that wasn't human, and a whispering in his mind that made every instinct scream danger. He knew immediately that he had broken the unspoken rule. Humans were told to never meet her eyes. Anyone who did faced either instant death or a fate that was impossible to escape. And yet here he was, locked in a gaze that seemed to pierce through his very soul. "Who are you?" Solara's voice was soft, melodic, and yet it carried the weight of command. Every word vibrated through the palace, and Kale could feel it resonating in his bones. I'm Kale," he managed to say, his voice steadier than he felt. "Explorer. Human." Solara's lips curved slightly, a hint of amusement that did nothing to ease the fear curling in Kale's stomach. "A human, bold, or perhaps foolish, to enter my palace alone." Her eyes held him, and he realized that fear was only part of the danger. There was curiosity there, too. Something ancient and lonely, watching him as if weighing every choice he had made in life. Kale took a careful step back, trying to keep his posture calm. "I did not mean to intrude. I only wanted to map the palace. I did not know." "Do not know the cost of a human's gaze," Solara said, finishing his sentence. She moved closer, gliding across the floor without touching it. "You have see me. Now you are bound by the curse. The choice is simple. Marry me or die." Kale's heart thudded so hard he was certain she could feel it. His mind raced. There had to be a way to survive. There had to be. He had read every file, every report on Zithra-7 and Solara's court. None of it explained how to escape this fate once the gaze was met. Yet Kale was human, and humans thrived when all odds were against them. He straightened his shoulders and met her eyes again, not with fear, but with calm reasoning. "There must be another way," he said. "Surely a curse, no matter how ancient, can be broken by understanding, by diplomacy, by action." Solara paused, tilting her head. She had ruled countless worlds, faced warriors, scholars, and conquerors. Few had ever spoken to her with such confidence after meeting her gaze. Most trembled, whispered, or tried to flee. Kale stood firm. "Your confidence is unusual," she said. Her eyes studied him with an intensity that made him feel both exposed and strangely understood. "Very well. Perhaps you will not die immediately. You may remain in my court, under observation. We shall see if your mind, your courage, and your humanity are worthy of surviving the curse." Kale exhaled quietly, fighting the tension that had coiled his chest like a steel band. "Thank you," he said. "I will do my best to prove myself." Courtiers who had been silently observing stepped forward. Their forms were elegant, alien, yet eerily familiar in the way they mirrored Kale's cautious gestures. One of them spoke in a melodic tone, translated for him by the device at his wrist. "Human, the queen's choice is final. You will follow. The palace rules, and any attempt to escape may cost your life. But your courage, it is noted." Kale nodded. His mind raced with plans. Escape seemed impossible, yet survival might depend on understanding Solara, not deceiving her. He had read enough about human history to know that empathy and intelligence often outlasted raw strength. Solara led him through a series of corridors, each more breathtaking than the last. Bioluminescent vines spiraled upward, carrying energy. Pulses that lit their path. Pools of liquid light reflected alien constellations in miniature. Kale could hardly breathe at the wonder of it all. But he forced himself to focus. The palace was a cage as much as it was a wonder. "You may rest for now," Solara said, her eyes softening just slightly. "But remember, Kale, you are not merely my guest. You are bound by the curse. Every decision, every action will be measured. Fail, and the consequences will be final." Kale bowed respectfully. "I understand, Your Majesty." As she left, Kale allowed himself a private moment to think. He had survived the first encounter, yes, but he now realized the magnitude of what he faced. Marrying an alien queen or dying was not merely a story from old galactic legends. It was his reality. He found a quiet corner of the chamber to sit and reflect. He thought about all the worlds he had seen, the dangers he had faced, and the lessons he had learned. Every survival story had one common thread. Humans adapted, they reasoned, they persevered. Kale would do the same. Nightfall or what? Past for night on a planet with twin suns and the palace glowed brighter in the darkness. Kale stared out at the alien landscape, a planet alive with impossible beauty, and he realized something vital. Fear could kill him, yes, but courage could save him. Not brute force, not clever gadgets, but human courage and ingenuity. Have to rely on every ounce of wit, every spark of empathy, every shred of bravery he had ever possessed. Tomorrow, he would face the court. He would face Solara again. And perhaps in doing so, he could turn the curse into something more than a sentence. Perhaps he could prove that, even in the face of alien power, human heart and mind could survive, and maybe even change a queen's fate. As he closed his eyes, Kale made a promise to himself. He would not die. Not here. Not yet. Humans had a history of surviving the impossible, of achieving what others thought they could not. He would be the first human in history to face the cursed alien queen and live to tell the tale. Perhaps if fate was kind, he might even earn her respect. And somewhere deep in the palace, Solara watched. She was curious now. Curious enough to wonder if this human might be different from all the others who had fallen before her. In her long life, she had learned to expect fear, deceit, and despair. But Kale's courage intrigued her. The game had begun, and neither of them could yet guess how it would end. The next morning, Kale awoke to the soft hum of the palace. The light here was different from Earth, softer and warmer, yet it carried a weight that pressed on him. Every corner of the chamber seemed alive, and he felt as if the walls themselves were watching him. He dressed quickly, taking a deep breath. Today, he would face Queen Solara again. The first encounter had been terrifying, yes, but it had also been enlightening. He knew now that survival required more than caution, required understanding her world and her rules. A soft chime announced his presence in the main hall. He stepped out, and his eyes widened. The throne room was enormous, filled with platforms that floated in the air, connected by glowing bridges. The walls were lined with alien runes that pulsed gently, illuminating the space with soft light. Alien attendants moved silently, carrying tools or objects Cale did not recognize. But at the center of the room was Solara, seated gracefully on a throne that seemed to grow from the floor itself. Her eyes found him instantly. Cale felt the familiar pull of the curse, but he met her gaze without flinching. The human heart, he reminded himself, was strong, even in the face of danger. "You are punctual," Solara said, her voice calm but commanding. "Good. You understand respect at least." Cale bowed slightly. "I do my best, Your Majesty," she gestured, and a platform rose beside her. "Today, you will undergo the first trial. It is not meant to kill you yet. It is meant to reveal your mind and your character. If you succeed, you will earn my attention and perhaps a longer life. Fail, and you understand the consequences." Cale swallowed. His mind raced. This trial could be anything. The alien court had watched him with curiosity before, but now all eyes were fixed on him. He had to remain calm. He had to remain human. The platform lifted, and Cale found himself standing in a chamber that was entirely different from the throne room. It was vast, circular, and its floor was a mirror of reflective light. At the center stood a pedestal with a glowing orb that seemed to hum with energy. Cale approached cautiously as he neared the orb. A voice echoed through the chamber, "Not Solaris, but something older, something ancient. Human, prove that you are worthy. Solve what others cannot act where others fail, and show that your heart is stronger than your fear." Suddenly, the orb projected a series of floating shapes, geometric and shifting. Lines of light formed patterns that moved faster than Cale's eyes could follow. He realized immediately that this was a test of intellect, a puzzle designed to measure reasoning. He stepped back and studied the shapes. Humans had a long history of solving problems by observing patterns, by connecting pieces of knowledge in ways that were creative and adaptive. He remembered games he had played as a child, strategies he had developed for situations where brute force was useless. Slowly, he began to manipulate the shapes. His fingers moved instinctively, guided by logic and intuition. Arzor, perhaps. Minutes, time felt strange here, passed as he rearranged patterns, tested outcomes, and calculated possibilities. Each success made the orb glow brighter, and Cale could feel Solara's attention on him, even though she was not present in the chamber at last. The final shape clicked into place. The orb pulsed once, then split into hundreds of glowing fragments that floated upward, forming a bridge of light leading to another part of the chamber. Cale stepped forward, heart pounding. He had passed the first test. The second trial awaited him on the bridge. As he crossed, the environment shifted again. Now, he stood in a dense forest, but unlike the forest outside the palace, this one seemed alive in a more threatening way. The trees moved slightly, as if observing him, and strange sounds echoed in the distance. At the center of the forest, he saw a cage filled with small alien creatures. Their eyes were wide with fear, and their forms shimmered faintly like liquid, light-given shape. A voice resonated through the forest. "These creatures are endangered. You must save them. Do so, and you prove that your heart is capable of compassion." Cale's mind raced. There were predators in the forest, invisible at first, but detectable by faint ripples in the air. He realized the trial was testing courage and moral judgment. He could try to brute force the situation, or he could carefully plan his movements. To ensure both his safety and that of the creatures, he crouched low, observing patterns in the predator's movements. Timing was crucial. Using branches and debris, he created diversions, allowing the creatures to escape one by one. When a predator lunged, he blocked it with quick maneuvers and clever use of the environment, never striking to kill, but always to protect. Finally, the last creature scampered into safety. Cale exhaled, his chest aching from adrenaline and relief. The forest dissolved around him, and he found himself back in a chamber of reflective light where Solara awaited. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes held a glimmer of approval. "You have shown courage and compassion," she said. "Few have managed both, yet the final trial remains. The final trial will test what lies deepest within your being. Will you succeed, or will fear guide your choices?" Cale nodded. He felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and determination. Each trial had been designed to strip away fear, to reveal the core of who he was. And Cale knew that humans, when stripped to their essence, were brave, resourceful, and adaptable. The final trial transported him to a vast void, where stars swirled in impossible patterns. A singular structure hovered ahead, a tower of crystal that seemed to stretch beyond perception. Cale sensed immediately that this trial was not only physical, but also psychological. The challenge was to confront something he could not yet see. As he approached the tower, a figure emerged, a shadow of himself, but distorted, monstrous, reflecting his deepest fears and doubts. The shadow spoke, echoing Cale's own insecurities. "You are human, fragile, weak. You cannot survive here. You will fail. You will die." Cale's first instinct was fear, but he forced himself to take a steadying breath. Humans had always faced adversity, not by succumbing to fear, but by using it as fuel. He focused on his training, on the lessons he had learned across countless worlds. "I am human," he said aloud. "I am not perfect. I am not invincible. But I survive. I adapt. I overcome." The shadow advanced, but Cale's confidence, his clarity of purpose, caused it to falter. Step by step, he moved forward, refusing to retreat. With each stride, the shadow shrank, dissolving into fragments of light. When Cale reached the top of the tower, he stood facing the void, feeling the immense power of the trial, and yet realizing he had mastered it not through force, but through human determination, intelligence, heart. A soft light enveloped him, and he was returned to Solara's chamber. She regarded him silently, her eyes searching for truth, for courage, for the spark that had carried him through the trials. "You are remarkable," she finally said. "I have ruled many worlds, faced countless beings, yet few have survived. My trials with integrity and courage intact. You are not merely human, you are a force to be reckoned with." Cale bowed, humbled but proud. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only acted as I believed I should." Solara's lips curved into the faintest smile. "And that is what sets you apart. Many would have tried deceit or brute strength, but you relied on your mind and your heart. That is a rarity among any species." Cale's heart surged with relief. He had survived the first day. He had passed the trials designed to test intellect, compassion, and courage. And yet he knew that the days ahead would demand even more. The curse was still in effect, and Solara's attention was now fully on him. Every moment in her presence would be a test. Every action measured against the impossible standards of a being who had seen centuries pass like moments. He was exhausted. But he felt a spark of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, humanity could endure even the most ancient and powerful curses. Perhaps his ingenuity, courage, and compassion were not only tools for survival, they were proof that human beings, even one small explorer, could make a difference in worlds far beyond their own. As he prepared to rest, Cale knew one thing with certainty: surviving the curse would not be enough. He would have to earn Solara's trust, understand her world, and prove that even a human could matter in the life of a queen who had known only fear and solitude for centuries. And Cale, ever the explorer, was determined to rise to that challenge. The journey was only beginning. The morning air of Zithera 7 carried a strange calmness. Kale had spent the night in a chamber designed for rest, but sleep had been uneasy. Even in rest, the palace seemed alive, watching, measuring, observing his every breath. He had survived the first trials. He had demonstrated intellect, courage, and compassion. Yet deep inside, he knew the most difficult part lay ahead. Solara had summoned him early. He rose and followed the silent attendants through corridors that shimmered with soft light, winding and twisting as if the palace itself wanted to test his orientation. When he arrived at the throne room, the queen was already waiting, seated elegantly, her eyes like swirling galaxies. Kale felt the familiar pull of the curse, a subtle pressure that reminded him of the life-or-death stakes that hung over him. "You have done well so far," Solara said, her voice calm yet firm. "Few can navigate my trials. Fewer still impress me. But trials alone cannot reveal the full measure of a being. Today, you will learn truths that are not told lightly, and you will be tested in ways you cannot yet imagine." Kale nodded, keeping his composure. "I am ready, Your Majesty." She gestured, and a portal of liquid light appeared at the far end of the throne room. Kale stepped forward, and the world around him shifted. The portal transported him to a vast valley bathed in the light of a star that seemed unusually close. Crystalline trees stretched toward the sky, and rivers of liquid energy flowed between glowing hills. Kale felt awe, but he reminded himself to stay alert. At the center of the valley stood a small structure, an ancient-looking temple. Its walls were etched with symbols older than any human civilization. Kale approached carefully, noting that the air vibrated slightly, like the hum of a distant engine. A voice spoke, but not in the tone of Solara. It was softer, filled with melancholy. "Kale, human, you have faced challenges of the mind and heart. Now you will face the truth of the curse itself. What you see here is the history you do not yet know." Holographic images projected from the temple walls, showing moments from centuries past. Kale watched, mesmerized. He saw Solara as a young queen, full of promise and kindness, guiding her people with wisdom. And then he saw betrayal, alien factions plotting, rivals attempting. Assassination, whispers of envy and hatred. One ancestor, he realized, had placed the curse upon her, hoping to isolate her forever, to ensure she never trusted another being. Kale's mind worked quickly. The curse was not merely a magical or technological effect. It was tied to Solara's emotions, her trust, and her isolation. She had lived for centuries without companionship, and the curse was as much a prison of the heart as it was of power. A figure appeared before him, memory. Sci-Fi. Sci-Fi. "Do you see now?" it asked. "I am bound by trust that has been stolen from me. Every gaze holds danger. Every interaction is a risk. Humans, you are bold or foolish." Kale stepped closer. "I see it," he said. "The curse is not just fear or magic. It is loneliness, centuries of it. And the danger exists only because you have never allowed anyone to truly approach you. I cannot break it alone, but perhaps we can face it together." The vision shimmered and vanished. Kale felt a mix of relief and apprehension. He now understood the depth of Solara's struggle, but he also realized the stakes were higher than ever. Trusting him more, allowing him to exist in her world, would require Solara to challenge centuries of isolation. Suddenly, the valley shifted again. Kale was no longer alone. Alien courtiers appeared, their forms elegant and alien, yet their expressions wary. They had gathered here for observation, perhaps testing Kale's responses or waiting to judge him. A tall figure stepped forward, Human, the Queen's trust is not easily earned. If you are to survive, you must prove that your heart is true and your mind is unyielding. You must demonstrate what makes your species remarkable. Kale nodded. Sensing the challenge, he had survived physical, intellectual, and moral trials before, but now the test was subtler. It was about perception, influence, and understanding. He needed to navigate alien politics while showing integrity, courage, and empathy, human qualities that could be powerful even among advanced civilizations. The first test of this new phase came swiftly. A creature much larger than any he had seen before emerged from the glowing forests. Its body was armored in crystalline plates, and its eyes glowed like molten gold. It growled, a sound that reverberated in Kale's chest. The alien courtiers moved back, unsure how to respond. Kale's instinct was to run, but he remembered Solara's words, courage and empathy. He studied the creature carefully. Its movements were defensive, its eyes wary, not aggressive without cause. He noticed a thorn-like growth embedded in one of its legs, causing pain and limiting its movement. Slowly, Kale approached, speaking in calm tones, hoping the universal cadence of reassurance would reach the creature. Using a tool from his pack, he carefully removed the thorn. The creature flinched but did not strike. Once freed, it stepped back, then bowed slightly, a gesture Kale interpreted as gratitude. The courtiers murmured among themselves, impressed by his bravery and compassion. The next challenge tested Kale's intellect and negotiation skills. The alien factions surrounding the valley began to argue, each claiming the valley, the temple, and its resources as their own. They were powerful. Ancient civilizations with complex hierarchies, and their disputes could have led to violence. Kale stepped forward. He did not raise a weapon. He did not threaten. Instead, he spoke calmly, reasoning with each faction in turn. You all value this land, he said, but conflict will destroy it. Cooperation can allow all of you to benefit. Your resources, your knowledge, your culture, combined, they can create something greater than any of you alone. Do not let envy or fear dictate your choices. His words resonated. The alien factions were surprised that a human one so small and fragile, compared to them, could command such respect and reason. Slowly, they began to negotiate, following Kale's guidance. By the end, the factions reached an uneasy but genuine agreement. Kale had demonstrated human ingenuity, diplomacy, and empathy. As the sun of Zithra-7 dipped toward the horizon, the valley shimmered with renewed light. Solara appeared beside him, her presence both comforting and intimidating. You have done more than survive, she said. You have demonstrated qualities that I have rarely seen in any species: wisdom, compassion, courage, and insight. You have navigated trials of mind, heart, and spirit with the very essence of humanity. Kale bowed. I only acted as I believed. Any being should act. Survival is not enough. Understanding, helping, and facing challenges. That is how life becomes meaningful. Solara's eyes softened, though they still held the weight of centuries. Few beings can claim to understand me after a single day, yet you have done more than understand. You have touched the core of what binds my existence. Trust is not freely given, human. And yet, I feel a glimmer of possibility. Kale felt a rush of both relief and determination. This was no longer merely a struggle to survive a curse. It was becoming something more profound, a chance to bridge worlds, to demonstrate that humanity, even one small explorer, could influence destinies far beyond Earth. But there was no time to rest. The day's trials had been exhausting, yet Kale sensed that the real challenges lay ahead. The curse was not broken. Solara's trust was fragile, and the eyes of alien civilizations were now watching him closely. Every choice, every action from this moment on would be scrutinized, tested, and remembered. That evening, as Kale sat alone in a chamber filled with the soft glow of Zithra-7's twin moons, he reflected on what he had learned. Humans were resilient, because they could combine intellect, courage, and compassion in ways that transcended physical limits. They could reason with beings far older, far stronger, far wiser. They could survive not merely through force, but through the power of choice, understanding, and moral clarity. Kale understood now that survival was only part of the journey. To live and thrive, he would need to continue demonstrating what made humanity remarkable, not just in thought or in courage, but in heart. And he would need to do it before Solara's patience or the alien faction's suspicions ran out. The night stretched on. The palace hummed softly, alive with energy and intent. Kale closed his eyes, not in fear, but in preparation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations, and perhaps a deeper understanding of Solara herself. He had survived the first trials. He had faced fear and uncertainty with human ingenuity and heart. And now, he was ready to face the unknown path ahead. Somewhere, deep within the palace, Solara watched. She was no longer merely testing him. She was observing, learning, and perhaps beginning to trust. Kale's courage, compassion, and cleverness had left an impression not just on her court, but on her own guarded heart. And Kale, human explorer, understood one thing clearly: surviving the curse was no longer enough. To truly thrive, he would need to reach beyond mere survival and demonstrate the full measure of humanity's worth. Only then could he hope to change not just his own fate, but the fate of a queen who had known only isolation for centuries. The journey continued, and the stakes were higher than ever. The palace of Zithara 7 seemed quieter that morning. Yet Kale sensed tension in the air. He had survived the first trials, demonstrated courage, intellect, and compassion, and even influenced alien factions with his diplomacy. But he knew that the real challenge was only beginning. The curse of Solara was more than rules or rituals. It was centuries of isolation, suspicion, and political intrigue. Kale was summoned to Solara's private chambers, a space unlike any other in the palace. The room was filled with glowing artifacts, delicate crystalline sculptures, and star maps that traced the paths of countless galaxies. The walls pulsed faintly, reflecting Solara's mood as much as the ambient light. Kale felt both awe and apprehension. Here, the queen was truly herself, free from the observation of her court. Solara sat by a window that overlooked the luminous forests below. She motioned for Kale to approach. "You have performed well," she said. "But understanding is not enough to survive the curse. You must see the truth behind it." Kale bowed. "I am ready, Your Majesty." "Please, tell me what I must know." Solara hesitated. For the first time, Kale noticed a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "Long before you were born, before your species even reached this system, my ancestors ruled these lands. Power is not always a gift. It can be a burden. And with burdens come enemies. One of my ancestors, jealous of my lineage and fearful of the trust I could command, placed a curse upon my life. The curse binds me to isolation, making it so that no being may look upon me without consequence." Kale listened intently. "So the curse is not just magic. It's a form of control?" "Precisely," Solara said. "It is meant to prevent me from trusting anyone. Over centuries, it has kept me alone, surrounded by allies and courtiers who fear me more than they know me. It is a prison built not of walls, but of expectation and fear." Kale's mind raced. He had suspected something deeper, but the truth was more complex than he imagined. This was not simply a test of survival. It was an emotional, psychological, and political trial. Solara's life had been shaped by suspicion and betrayal, and the curse had amplified every fear. He stepped closer. "Your Majesty, I understand now. The curse is not unbreakable because of power or magic. It is unbreakable because of trust. If trust can be given and earned, perhaps the curse can be changed, at least for you." Solara's eyes softened further. "But a shadow remained. And why should I trust you, human? You have shown courage? Yes, but trust. That is not one in a day." Kale's lips curved into a determined smile. "Then let me earn it. Not because I must survive, but because I believe in what is right. I have faced danger, protected lives, and guided disputes without harming others. I can offer the same loyalty and understanding to you." Let me show that humans, even one human, can be trustworthy. Solara studied him, her gaze intense. Then she rose and gestured toward a holographic table displaying the palace and surrounding regions. Very well, if you are to earn my trust, you must confront the challenges that have plagued me for centuries. Not just survival, but loyalty, diplomacy, and insight. There are forces and ancient factions who would exploit my curse for power. They do not want you to succeed. Kale nodded, absorbing the weight of her words. He understood now that the trials were not finished. Survival alone would not suffice. He had to navigate political intrigue, reveal hidden truths, and act with unwavering human integrity. The first challenge came immediately. A delegation of alien leaders entered the chamber, their expressions masked with politeness, but eyes sharp with suspicion. They represented factions that had long contested Solara's rule. Each one viewed Kale as an intruder, a fragile human, who might destabilize their delicate alliances. You claim to understand our ways, one leader said, his voice resonating like a drum. Yet you are but a human, a species young and untested. How can we trust your judgment? Kale bowed respectfully. I do not ask for blind trust. I ask for fairness and reason. My actions will speak louder than words. I am not to dominate or deceive, but to facilitate understanding and peace. Solara observed silently, a faint smile on her lips. Kale's approach was different from most humans or aliens she had encountered. He did not seek power. He sought clarity and connection. The negotiations were tense. Kale listened to each leader, noting fears, ambitions, and grievances. He proposed solutions that honored the interests of all parties without harming anyone. Slowly, alien minds that had been rigid with suspicion began to shift. Compromise replaced hostility, and tentative agreements formed. Kale had shown that human reasoning, empathy, communication could succeed where centuries of distrust had failed. As the leaders departed, Solara spoke softly, "You have done more than survive your trials. You have begun to influence the world around me in ways few could. That is rare, human." Kale bowed. "I only act as I believe is right, Your Majesty. That is all any being can do." Solara's gaze grew more intense. The curse is not only a test of intellect or courage, it is a test of your ability to see beyond fear, to act with integrity, and to influence hearts. You've begun to do. So, the next part of the trial was more personal. Solara led Kale to a chamber filled with artifacts of her past memories preserved in crystal, displaying moments of triumph, loss, and betrayal. Kale watched in awe as he saw glimpses of her childhood, her early rule, and the moment the curse was placed. The images showed her isolation, her mistrust of even her closest allies, and the burden of leadership she had carried for centuries. "You see," Solara said, "the curse is not merely punishment. It is a reflection of my life. Those who meet my gaze inherit my history, my fears, my responsibilities. Most cannot bear it. Most fail." Kale stepped forward. "I see now that this is why you are so guarded. Your life has been shaped by betrayal, fear, and expectation. But I also see your strength, your wisdom, and your heart. You are not defined by the curse, but by the choices you make in spite of it." Solara's eyes softened further. "Have ever spoken to me with such clarity? You understand that survival alone is meaningless. You understand that trust, loyalty, and courage are the keys to breaking the chains that bind me. Yet, it is not enough for me alone. You must show that these qualities can influence others, that humanity's light can shine even in shadow." Kale nodded, resolute. "Then I will continue, Your Majesty. I will not falter. I will prove that humans can rise to challenges, not through strength alone, but through heart, mind, and action." The final phase of the day's trial came swiftly. Sudden alarm echoed through the Palessa faction, opposed to Solara's rule, had attempted a coup. Alien guards rushed to defend the throne, but Kale realized that violence alone would not solve the crisis. He needed to act with strategy, intelligence, and diplomacy. He guided the palace guards, predicting the moves of the opposing faction based on patterns and behavior he had observed earlier. Using minimal force, Kale helped contain the threat, while preventing unnecessary bloodshed. When the leaders of the coup were captured, he spoke to them calmly, explaining that trust and cooperation could achieve more than deceit and aggression. Slowly, some of them began to understand, their hostility softened by reason and example. Solara watched, impressed. "You have faced the culmination of knowledge, diplomacy, and courage," she said, "and you have succeeded. Few beings, human or alien, could navigate the complexities of my life and emerge with integrity intact. You are not merely surviving the curse, you are shaping the world around it." Kale felt a surge of pride, tempered by the awareness that the curse was still active. Alcelera's trust, though growing, was fragile. The factions he had negotiated with were cautious, and the palace itself remained a place of observation and evaluation. Yet he knew one undeniable truth. Humans, even one human, could change outcomes where others saw only fate. As the day ended, Solara led Kale to the balcony overlooking the palace grounds. The twin suns of Zithera 7 were setting, casting colors across the sky that defied description. Kale felt both awe and resolve. He had survived challenges, influenced alien politics, and earned a measure of trust from a queen who had known only solitude. Solara stood beside him, her expression thoughtful. "Kale, the curse is still in place. Your gaze has bound you, and the path ahead remains uncertain. But today, you have shown what it means to be human: courage, empathy, intelligence, and integrity. Perhaps these qualities are what will ultimately allow the curse to be confronted and overcome." Kale bowed. "Then I will continue, Your Majesty. I will face every trial, every challenge, every obstacle, not merely to survive, but to prove that humanity can endure, adapt, and inspire even in the face of centuries-old curses." Solara's eyes held a spark of admiration. Few have ever spoken with such resolve. "You are not only a survivor, Cal, you are a force. Remember this, survival is only the beginning. Trust, influence, and understanding are the keys to shaping not only your fate, but mine as well." As night fell and the palace glowed softly beneath the twin moons, Kale reflected on the journey so far. The curse remained, but he had begun to understand it in ways few could. Survival had required courage and intellect. Influence required empathy and diplomacy. And trust. Trust required consistency, understanding, and the willingness to act with integrity, even when all seemed uncertain. Kale closed his eyes briefly, preparing himself for the trials that remained. The palace of Zithera 7 was quiet in the early hours, yet beneath the calm, tension simmered. Kale had survived trials of intellect, courage, and heart. He had navigated alien politics, demonstrated empathy, and earned Solara's cautious trust. Yet the curse remained, a silent shadow, binding him to the queen and her destiny. Today, he knew, would decide everything. Solara summoned him to the throne room, her expression unreadable. The floating platforms and glowing bridges reflected the early light of Zithera 7's twin suns. Casa walked with measured steps, prepared for whatever awaited. This was no longer a series of tests, it was the confrontation of centuries-old fears. "The meeting of human will and alien power? You have done well," Solara said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of centuries. "You have faced my trials, proven your courage, and demonstrated the qualities I thought I would never see in any being. Yet the curse still exists. It is not broken because survival and trials alone are not enough. Today you must confront it and show what your species can truly achieve." Kale bowed. "I am ready, Your Majesty. I will face it, whatever form it takes." She nodded and gestured. A sphere of pulsating light formed before them, expanding into a vast chamber that seemed to exist between dimensions. Stars rotated slowly overhead, and the floor shimmered as if liquid. Kale felt the familiar pull of the cursed titan, a subtle pressure reminding him of the stakes. "You have seen my history, the betrayals, the isolation," Solara said. Now you will face the curse itself. You will either endure it or be consumed by it. Humans are fragile, yet capable of astonishing resilience. Show me what that means. Kale took a deep breath. He focused on every lesson he had learned, every challenge he had overcome, and every human trait that had carried him this far. Courage, empathy, ingenuity, and integrity. The chamber shifted, and a shadow formed, a towering figure that reflected Solara's own power, magnified and twisted. By centuries of fear and magic, the curse had taken shape, an embodiment of mistrust, isolation, and expectation. Human, the shadow said, its voice echoing through the chamber. You have survived tests of mind and heart, but this is beyond any trial. You are small, fragile, and fleeting. The Queen's fate is not yours to alter. You cannot break what has endured for centuries. Kale steadied himself. Fear rose, but he did not retreat. Humans had always faced impossible odds. They had survived worlds, wars, and catastrophes by relying on ingenuity, courage, and unity. He focused on what he had learned. The curse fed not only on power, but on fear, on the absence of trust, on centuries of loneliness. If he could offer the Queen understanding, connection, and proof of integrity, perhaps the curse could be weakened. I do not seek to destroy it with force, Kale said. I do not seek to deceive or overpower. I face it with clarity, courage, and heart. The curse is powerful, yes, but it cannot endure if trust, understanding, and loyalty exist between us. I offer myself as proof that these qualities can thrive. Shadows surged forward, massive and imposing, its presence suffocating. Yet Kale stood firm, focusing on the principles that had guided him through every trial. Step by step, he advanced, not with weapons, but with purpose. The shadow lashed out, but Kale anticipated its movements, drawing on logic, instinct, and compassion. Every strike he deflected, every maneuver he executed, weakened the shadow not through force, but through resolve and clarity. Then Solara's voice joined his thoughts, calm yet powerful. Kale, show me. Show me that trust can exist, that courage can prevail, that even a human can challenge what centuries of fear have built. Kale's determination intensified. He reached into the center of the chamber, where the shadow's form pulsed strongest, and focused on the bond he had begun to form with Solara. He thought of her strength, her wisdom, and the moments of trust and connection they had shared. Slowly, the shadow faltered, its shape losing coherence, cracks of light appearing across its surface. Human, it whispered, fading, perhaps. Perhaps I underestimated the power of the heart. With one final step, Kale reached the core of the chamber. The shadow shattered completely, dissolving into particles of light that swirled upward and vanished. Silence fell, heavy yet serene. The curse's pressure lifted, placed by a subtle warmth, the first sensation of freedom Solara had felt in centuries. Solara appeared beside Kale, radiant and composed, yet her eyes glimmered with tears. You have done what few could, she said softly. You faced the curse not with strength alone, but with understanding, courage, and the essence of what makes your species remarkable. You have earned my trust, Kale, and in doing so, you have changed my fate. Kale bowed, relief and pride surging through him. It was not only for survival, Your Majesty. It was to show that humanity can endure, adapt, and rise to challenges. No matter how impossible they seem. Solara extended her hand. You have proven that humans, though small, possess qualities that can rival even the most ancient of powers. You have shown me that connection, trust, and courage are forces stronger than fear. And now, you may choose. You may leave, or you may remain by my side. Kale hesitated, considering the journey he had endured. He had faced danger, political intrigue, and the most ancient curse in the galaxy. He had seen the power of humanity, the ability to influence, to adapt, and to inspire change even in worlds far beyond their own. His choice was clear. I will remain, he said firmly, not because I am bound by the curse, but because I choose to be here, because I believe in what we can build together, and because humanity thrives where trust and courage exist. Solara smiled, a warmth spreading across her features. For the first time in centuries, she felt hope, companionship, and the possibility of a future unbound by fear. Then so be it. The curse is broken, not by magic alone, but by what you have shown, heart, mind, and unwavering determination. Palace seemed to shift around them, brighter and softer, as if recognizing the change. Alien courtiers, who had once viewed Kale with suspicion, now watched with admiration. Even distant factions that had tested him began to show respect, their previous hostility replaced by curiosity and tentative alliance. Kale's presence, his human qualities, had altered the course of not only Solara's life but the entire realm she governed. Over the following days, Kale and Solara worked together, rebuilding trust among the alien factions, strengthening alliances, and fostering a new era of cooperation. Kale's insights, strategic thinking, and compassion became invaluable. Where centuries of fear and isolation had created division, human ingenuity and heart created unity at night. Kale would walk the palace grounds with Solara, speaking of Earth, of human struggles, and of possibilities. She listened intently, fascinated by the resilience and adaptability of a species she had once dismissed as fragile. He spoke not to impress, but to share, and in doing so, he helped her see that the galaxy was not as isolated and perilous as she had believed. The bond between them grew, subtle yet undeniable. Trust had been earned through trials, courage, and understanding, and it had blossomed into something deeper. Solara, who had known only solitude and suspicion for centuries, now felt a connection that transcended species. Kale, who had survived impossible odds, found purpose and belonging in a world far beyond his own. One evening, as the twin moons of Zithara 7 cast silver light across the palace, Solara turned to Kale. "You have changed not only my fate, Kale, but the very essence of this realm. Your humanity, your courage, your compassion, your mind has proven that even the smallest being can reshape destiny." Kale smiled, feeling the weight of their journey, but also the lightness of accomplishment. To rise to challenges, to adapt, and to endure. But it is also the nature of trust and understanding to grow when given the chance. You have given me that chance, Solara. I will not squander it. Solara reached for his hand, her touch warm and grounding. Then let us face the future together, not as curse and captive, not as subject and queen, but as allies, friends, and perhaps more. Kale squeezed her hand, feeling the final threads of the curse dissolve. He had survived. Yes, but he had done more than survive. He had proven that humanity, even one human, could influence destinies, break chains of fear, create bonds that transcended time, species, and power. The palace hummed softly, alive with the energy of change. Alien factions that had once been wary now respected Kale. Solara's heart, long guarded and bound by centuries of fear, now held trust and hope. And Kale, human explorer, understood fully that survival was only the beginning. Courage, integrity, and heart were the true forces that could shape worlds. As the twin suns rose again, casting new light across Zithara 7, Kale and Solara stood together on the palace balcony, looking out over the transformed realm. The curse was gone, replaced by possibility, trust, and unity. The journey had been perilous, the trials immense, but humanity had endured and prevailed, and in that moment, Kale knew that no matter the challenge, no matter the galaxy or curse, human spirit would always shine, even in the darkest of places. The future was theirs to build, together.